Well, good afternoon. How nice to see all these happy, smiling faces again today. Well, you know, time to turn off your cell phones. And I must admit, I don't think I heard a single cell phone ring last week. I was very pleased with that. So you're all doing very well so far. So turn off your phone, please. Okay, Wisdom Wednesday. Ollie members and guests are invited to attend Wisdom Wednesday. That's from 2:30 to 4 p.m. right here on this stage. And it will be Richard Guether will present Auburn University. Geether. Good. It doesn't look like Geether, but Geether. They should probably spell things phonetically for me because I am kind of challenged. So Richard Geether will be here to present Auburn University campus development efforts. I'm sure that'll be extremely interesting. Annual meeting will be May 20th at the Fellowship Hall at the Auburn Church of Christ. Ollie member Art Fair is from 9 to 10. The meeting is from 10 to 11. So I hope to see everybody there. It should be fun to see the artwork. And if you intend to show some artwork, there are supposed to be some flyers and a sign-in. So please feel free to do so. That'd be great. Well, today's class, from what I understand, will be in regard to Dante. And this is a tremendous piece of literature. Is probably one of the most famous pieces of literature from this time period, particularly the fact, and I know this is going to sadden some of you, that it was not originally written in Latin. So those of you Latin lovers out there, you will probably be a little sad by the fact that it was not written in Latin. But indeed, everybody I'm sure is familiar with the Inferno aspect of the famous poem. But I think not everybody probably pays as much attention to Purgatorio and Paradiso. And of course, Dante is led through Paradiso by his, I guess, wannabe lover, and I love to call it this. I love to call her Beatrice. Doesn't Beatrice just sound so much nicer than Beatrice? So he's led through Paradiso with Beatrice. So now it is my pleasure to introduce a man who is going to help you understand where you will end up in the afterlife if indeed your cell phone goes off during his lecture, and it will not be Paradiso.
Thank you, thank you. Oh, goodness. No damnation here. But we do want to remember when we're talking about Dante's Divine Comedy, we are talking about threes. Everything is three, and we will see that repeatedly. Many of you will recognize the illustration before you of Dante and his vision of the earthly purgatory and the city of Florence and his most famous work. I think as far as a class in the late Middle Ages and literature, I don't know if you would agree with me, but I think it's probably as good as you're going to get because it's medieval, but as Frank has indicated, it's written in the vernacular. And so it has all aspects. In fact, I have to give credit to this great work for pushing me into the study of the Middle Ages. Yes, I was headed for a life in modern Europe until I came to Dante and said, no, I must go medieval because there's nothing in modern Europe that could be so fabulous as the Divine Comedy. I mean, there are many fine works, I'm sure, but this, of course, is I guess, a classic. Now, some might prefer Chaucer, and I respect them, because it is of the vernacular literature, it is 14th century, and I'm sure many of our collegiate English courses, which we so happily took, that you got to read these in class. Did many of you read parts of the Inferno? Maybe the Dorothy Sayers? Whoa, well, I better be careful then. I mean, I'm sure that you had a wonderful instructor, so I'm going to try to do a good job. That spurs me on. But I think that many of us realize as you utilize this work, that it shows you sort of the difference between what the medieval period was supposed to be and what it actually was, which makes it very, very interesting indeed. In other words, the idea of the medieval ideals, the way that it was all supposed to work. You know, I kind of like that kind of history, the history of ideas. And then, the history of reality. That'll bring you down because, of course, it always falls short, but fascinating as it does so. Dante, of course, was an Italian through and through. Now, we know there was no Italy until the 19th century. So I use that term Italian only in the cultural sense, because he was in his heart and soul a man of Florence. He came from a blue-blooded family too. He was actually, one of his ancestors actually died on a crusade. So, I mean, that's not the regular folks. This is the upper crust. He came from very, very well-known people, and he actually had all the advantages of education, erudition, that would bespeak the upper classes of a city like Florence. And many of us love to visit Florence. But you understand, as you look at the map, and I'm sure you knew this already, that in Italy there were all the city-states. And nobody ever says, well, you know, we have enough land, let's just live in peace. Yeah, yeah. War is a terrible thing. This peace movement didn't get out too much in Italy, because wars among the city-states, unless you're some German emperor that wants to come bring them together, then we're ready to fight somebody else. But other than that, once the imperial forces leave, then let's fight each other. And you can see part of it, of course. Look at Genoa, for example, between Florence, let's say, and Ferrara, and some of these obviously are of such a size that they are going to fight each other for economic opportunities, territory, and all the rest. At times they are united. In fact, they are united if anyone is an outsider and comes in and tries, like Frederick Barbarossa, to bring them together under his authority. In any event, that is the world that Dante grew up in, and Dante was headed for a career in the government of Florence. He went all the way up to the rank of a diplomat, like a roving diplomat. Some of you know that the papacy, followed by other Italian states, would be the first to have ambassadors, like foreign representatives, because usually, I know you'll be shocked, sometimes they were spies and were guilty of espionage, even though They were not supposed to be doing that. And, yes, again, they may have resorted to bribery and other such activities. Again, this is shocking to think of in that day and age. But Dante, without saying that there was anything sinister here, did gain a career. Unfortunately for him, and fortunately for us, I suppose, his career would be affected adversely because Florence went back and forth between various factions. And he grew up and became successful under people who were connected to his family. And when he got older, that group lost authority. Specifically, and again, it's funny how some of the people that we met before come back. And one of them, of course, is that, well, Mr. Papacy himself, Boniface VIII. You say, I thought he went to hell. He will, but just wait. Just let him stop breathing on you and he's going. I mean, that's a sure trip. You don't have to even, there's no question he's going to get there. Boniface VIII, we know for his conflicts with Philip IV of France and a variety of other activities, like he made that statement, every human creature is subject to the Roman pontiff. I'm quoting Unum Sanctum, 1302. And you know very well that as an Italian, he is going to be involved in Italian politics. You say, but he's the head of the church. He's St. Peter on earth. Well, but the family. It's always about the family, isn't it? Even though he's supposed to be leading the church. And as part of one of these major Italian factions, Boniface VIII is going to be associated with the faction that will take over Florence and other places. Something Dante is not going to forget. Because while Dante was on a mission, this is kind of interesting, Dante couldn't come back home. I mean, he was gone forever. He never went back to Florence. He was literally, oh gosh, wanted dead or alive. Do you remember, those of you from small towns, when you go to the post office and you see those people on those posters? Shocking back then. Yes, oh, yeah. And so Dante was, in fact, like that. He was an exile. And something about being an exile, I guess, is very good for the writing. I don't know whether he needed money necessarily, because his family was quite well-to-do, and his wife was as well. But I assume that he did it because he had this enormous ability, this great knowledge, and a great series of medieval beliefs. Now, of course, as Frank told us, Beatrice is going to form a very important part. You say, oh, how beautiful. And when did they say I do? They don't. Okay? No, no, no. You say, you mean he was an adulterer? Indeed not. Let me say, Beatrice is like the person we meet in the 2nd or 3rd grade, and we never really see again. And it would be scary if we did. So we don't want to see them again, right? This is always the memory, the memory. And she married, she died young, 25. But again, it's that kind of society. This is pre-Black Death, but young people dying is not uncommon at all. She too was from a prominent family of Florence. None of this is significant except to understand that it's first love, idealized love. It's love without having to do, you just in love. And it's just loving the ideal, it seems to me. And it was very beautiful and very important because, of course, representing the purity and beauty of the Blessed Virgin Mary and perfect woman. He wrote many works, and here's where our Latin comes. He got plenty of workouts in Latin. Don't worry about that. I guess you think, oh, he's so vernacular. No, no, no. No, it's true that as far as I'm aware, the Divine Comedy was one of the first great works written in Italian as it evolved, which makes it very, very important. But we also know that as this great author, he will come up with a number of essays and works, and you can get, you know, Dante's greatest hits. I mean, you get the whole volumes here. And you see, there's a book on world government in which he tries to develop theories about, you know, using logic to show that we should have one ruler, Christian of course, and under that ruler each section would have harmony in working with that ruler and the pontiff. The literary use of the vernacular, courtly love, how that's supposed to work. Again, trying to show in each of these works in Latin idealized beliefs in various aspects of the medieval world. And you understand when this is now. This is late 13th, early 14th century. Thank God he lived before the Black Death. He missed the Black Death. So at this point, I would say, I mean, it's bad to be exiled from your home, but a lot was going on in the medieval world that was very important, very positive, at least as he chose to see it. And indeed, the Divine Comedy was supposed to be a happy work. Many of us focus, I think, when we think about Dante's Divine Comedy, we tend to think about the morbid and the painful. But it's supposed to be a comedy going from sorrow to happiness. In threes: hell, purgatory, heaven. So, you're not going the other way. You're going up, not down. And that was the idea, that you go from bottom to top. Not saying the attic is better than the basement, but you understand that in that particular concept, you're starting, as one author put it, it's like you're visiting a city and you start in the sewers. And you go up from there to the better parts of the edifice. And that is what he was trying to show here, because it is divine, because, as Boccaccio put it, because, you know, these people are very, very interrelated. Don't you think that Petrarch and Boccaccio were probably in the Dante fan club and just thought he was just the greatest thing? There is very, very important connections between these people. But obviously, Dante is almost Renaissance? You know, you can go either way on that. You could probably find some group debating it if you want to stay up and you've had plenty of coffee. And you can be ready to discuss, was Dante medieval or Renaissance? Yeah, there are people who do this. So just think about the opportunities that await you. Now, when we again think of this divine comedy, and again it was just called the comedy until the word divine was added, we know that it consists of the 3 sections, and it is literally the tale of Dante as he goes through his journey, a journey that had been described, some of you will recall from the Aeneid, that our hero in Virgil's epic will actually visit the underworld, and in an apocalyptic tale of St. Paul, in a book that doesn't make the New Testament, but there is a book called The Apocalypse of St. Paul, believe it or not, which describes his journey through the netherworld. So there are sources that Dante may have used for the idea of someone traveling and then saying, well, you know, this has been so interesting, I think I'll go back home now, you know. It's not my time. But this is the idea here of the journey of himself. And terza rima is the style, and I've seen this done, the literal translation into English, terza rima, which is fine if you prefer that to the free verse. And of course, with the 3 parts, and you know he must have planned this meticulously, because with 33 cantos in each one, and then 1 to end it all up, so you got 100 cantos. Everything clearly is based on 3s. And it is replete with Catholicism and classicism. Oh, you just delve in and you are just inundated with imagery of the classical world and the world of the faith. And you say, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm back in school. Oh, happy days. Yes. So there's just one fun passage after another. Depressing at times, but that's because you stayed in the sewer too long and you needed to keep moving. He wrote in other works, and I've quoted just because I thought it was so interesting, that while literally the state of the soul after death, straightforwardly affirmed, is the subject, he goes on to say allegorically, and again, this is medieval Catholic doctrine, man, as by good or ill deserts in the exercise of his free choice, he becomes liable to rewarding or punishing justice. And I think that's as stark and clear as it can be. No excuses. No, I was a victim or this and that. They're not interested. You're getting what's coming to you. I mean, this is that particular belief. It's very interesting because, and again, notice free will. If there are Calvinist, Geneva people out there, you understand this is not whereof we speak. We are speaking of very high medieval Catholicism. Everybody gets what's coming to them, okay? And as we are going to see, Dante understands this is a work, a literary work. It is not a work of history, because people will sometimes say, well, I wonder why they got into that section. Why did Dante put them there? Well, again, he is merely writing about people who can exemplify certain characteristics that he may wish to demonstrate, but he is not assuming that he has the right, damn you, you're going down, or wow, you're going to be right up there, baby, you're great. I think, again, he just knew of people, and he would use them as examples. I mean, you could say it's a little presumptuous, but assume that he wrote this at a time when he wouldn't be around too long to have to deal with any criticisms. And believe me, there were critics. Among them, surprise, surprise, the authorities of the Catholic Church. Yes, it was considered a no-no, rated X. Do not read. Because, of course, despite the fact that after I'm just babbling on about how it follows Catholic theology, it did have aspects to it that were not considered, forgive, kosher Catholic, just not to be acceptable. The guides for his journey through the three parts of the eternal world represent, of course, the empire and the church. We have to start with the empire, even though it's run by lay people, inferior. But we start with them because they are the lesser. And that will mean Virgil. And you would have thought in his life, and I assume I'm right about this, Carol, I wonder what you think, that he would have looked to Virgil as his mentor. He probably just loved all of his writings. And he believed so much in the Roman Empire. He may have been a Florentine, but the idea of the Roman Empire and all that it symbolized for him was very important. So since Virgil wrote the Aeneid, and such a great man, but of course, a great non-Christian man. Strike one, big strike two. Okay, so he's there, and you see the guard, the little naked guard there, sitting, and he's saying now, what you bringing that heathen in here? Because, yeah, it's a challenge. So, yeah. So there are certain questions that are going to come up. You see, and on the other one, of course, is a very grandiose Queen of Heaven for you. The idea of Beatrice is, of course, being sort of transformed into Mary, but it's mostly the symbol of the pure young woman to me that we're looking at here. And so Beatrice can become the Virgin Mary easily enough. But those are the two guides, and we will see the changing of the guards, if you will, during the work. As you know, he is transformed at the age of 35. Midway this way of life, we're bound upon, I guess the idea being that, at least my father used to say, I'm on borrowed time. You ever heard that expression? The idea is anything after 70. So at the age of 35, he thought himself to be in midlife, having the old crisis there. So, as such, he is, and many of you will recognize this particular set of drawings from the 19th century, and showing him there in the dark wood, lost and all alone. Where should I go? Where am I? What am I? And trying to make sense of it all. Virgil appears, and again, if we follow the allegory, we know that Virgil, being a Roman, represents reason and philosophy. It's all we got going for us. I mean, I'm a pagan. You know, what do you expect? So I have this great power. You know who's behind me? Plato, Aristotle, and the guys. We're all there. We're a team. Non-Christian, to be sure, but a team. And we want to help you because you're facing 35, 36, depression. It's really hard to be that age. So that is the idea, and the allegory is, which way do I go? Where do I turn? Because I'm in darkness. And of course, this, is the allegory of the human being caught in this situation. And of course, then he reaches philosophy heaven. Yes, they're all there. All the people you learn to love in the core curriculum. Yes, you think, oh my gosh. Oh, geometry. Oh, physics. And loved it every day. Well, maybe not every day, but the idea is Homer, Aristotle, and the whole gang are all wonderful people in their place. But the limbo, as he construes it, and there is nothing that I'm aware of in Catholic theology that would have come up with any device like this. The way you say, well, what about some Jewish scholars? Oh, no, they were liberated. They were taken care of. They've moved on up. Jesus took care of them. So they're fine. But these fellas, it's a no-go. We are staying in a place called limbo. Limbo's not in hell. But these are nice people. They studied philosophy all the time. And not just because they had to either. Not because it was a core course. They took it because they wanted to take it. Yay. And they sigh a little bit because they know, this is it. We lost out because we were pre-Christ. But, gosh, what have you been reading, Aristotle? I don't know, Plato. What about you? Gosh, some of those books look really good. So that's that. You can just always talk about things and sigh a lot because you missed out on the higher salvation. But of course, Dante's going to say, thank you so much for bringing me here. I really always wanted to meet you. It's like a groupie. It's like you're meeting all these stars. Like my first medieval history convention. It's just like, oh, I read you, and that kind of thing. And they were going like, get away, leave me alone, And then there's Celestine V. I'm bringing back some old friends of ours. I hope you remember Celestine V. He's the one who resigned. He gave up the papacy, possibly deluded by the future Boniface VIII, who said, I'm the voice of God, and you shouldn't be Pope, you're a loser. So Benedict, the former Pope, Benedict XVI, used this as an example of his own resignation in recent years. So I thought it was kind of interesting. But this is an area which is not so comfortable because these people are called the neutrals. They didn't take either side. I don't know whether you're Sweden and Switzerland and all of that, but these, according to Dante, is a special section for people who don't make choices one way or the other. And according to that, poor Celestine V If he had stayed Pope, you know what wouldn't have happened? No, Boniface VIII. Damn him. And so, what do we blame Celestine V for? Boniface VIII. And so, you're not in hell, Celestine, but you might as well be. But do you see what he says? The heavens drive them out so as not to be less beautiful, and deep hell does not receive them, lest the wicked have some glory over them. Because the damned folks will say, you're a loser, you didn't even take sides. At least I played for the team. I mean, and we had a damn fine team, you know, that was bad. But that's the idea. But see him, he's a neutral. You can't play. Okay? Now, he's never named, but you see what it says. Him who from cowardice made the great refusal. On that little bit, scholars have assumed that meant Pope Celestine V. You can't prove it, but there is every reason to think that is the person to make the reference, because there's no question that Dante had a fixation on Boniface VIII. That is to say, a negative fixation, very negative. It's not like there's going to be a revision later on. There isn't. Now, once we get inside hell, it will simply get, as you would expect, worse. And it is in descending order, based on, of course, the fact that as we start out, we understand it will not get better than that, the famous line about abandoning all hope. What I think is so interesting is that the only change they can look forward to is Judgment Day. And you know what will happen on Judgment Day? You'll get your body back, because they're spirits right now. But then when they get their bodies, I think it'll just hurt more. So I mean, but it'll be a change, all right. But yeah, you're just damned. So it's not going to be like, oh, well, maybe some positive will come out of it. No, it won't. Abandon all hope. Okay? So with that understanding, and I just love this painting. You say, oh, romantic. Yeah, sorry about that. But it's very 19th century, isn't it? He's crossing over, and I always think it's the way that people gather around when I'm giving the final exam, and people gathering around the door, and I always think the damned are rushing into hell because they know nothing and they're so ill prepared. But let me in, I want to take it, And yeah, so you see them out there, and of course, Dante and Virgil, yes, and of course, yeah, the sinners are all around. And then, of course, Charon from Greek mythology is escorting, shall we say, the new arrivals into their permanent home. So that is a romantic depiction of that particular scene, which is so, I think, very lovely. Now here, of course, is an example of a reason that the church might not like it, other than references of certain popes who are, dare I say it, damned popes. You'll notice how Dante divides it up, and a lot of people don't think about this, but this is really a classical idea of sin and wrongdoing. Big three: incontinence, violence, and fraud. Yeah. It's not... it is not at all the way, as we will see, what you might think when you think of Christian versions, but he uses the classical ideas of wrong, and he says the ones that don't hurt anybody else but just hurt you. I mean, because if, for example, I overindulge, I was talking about the chicken salad earlier. If I doubled it up on chicken salad before speaking, I might now not be well. And you see, but I'm hurting only myself, not you. So the sin of gluttony then is personal. And that is the idea of lust, gluttony, things of that sort. So they get the top tier. They're still damned, okay? No hope, no hope. You're not coming up for parole. The second, violence, and violence in many forms, including dividing the church, schismatics, simoniacs. And again, now you're hurting other people, so you're damned for a lot of reasons. Then, of course, the final layer, and I'm having, of course, to summarize here, because I realize you'll rush out and get a copy and read it and be ready for a discussion later. But the last group, and these people are so bad that while people in violence might be soaking in excrement or something like that, the people guilty of fraud may well be in ice. The water has frozen because they're so wretched. But their eyes can't even close because the tears have frozen. Yeah. And, but again, they got it coming. They're fraudulent. They committed treason against God himself. So that's your big three. Again, that painting, I go to look at it every time I go to London. The museum is called the Wallace Collection. It's small, but a British fellow named Wallace, he and his wife like to go to Paris. And they bought all this stuff back in the, I guess, 18th century. And French needed money right bad. So they bought up a lot of these paintings. Again, you can figure out that's 19th century romantic. And you say, oh, for love, it would be worth to be in hell. Really? But that is the top level. You say, well, that's just so nice to be together. And you say, oh, I could just sing a song about that. But it always seems like that. I think you see Dante and Virgil watching them, and it's sort of like, you know, they say, do you have a puff? Do you have a Kleenex? Because you know, little tears, because you're so touched. I mean, something the young and the restless. Well, they were restless. Yeah. Yes, ma'am, because let me tell you, when her husband, who happened to be the brother, yes, and they were reading some love story, some medieval love saga. He did away with both of them. And you say, oh, but they'll be together forever. Oh. Well, again, that's what Dante's point is. It seems a lot better than it really is. But they'll be like that. Of course, the husband who killed them is way down low. Yeah, so he got his. Again, what if Francesca and Paolo had suddenly, when the knife was going in, and again, I'm doing this, what do you call that, recreating history. But suddenly Francesca said, God, I'm so sorry. I really didn't mean to commit this act of lust. Boom. Okay, then she wouldn't be there. The theory is always based on, I am a damned sinner and I'm proud. I love fornication, you know, that kind of thing. It's like, I know, there's no t-shirt like that, believe me. But I'm just saying, there is clearly the idea that lots of people make mistakes, but these people were really caught up in it and had no sense of remorse. Because when they tell their story to Dante in the Divine Comedy, it'll be sad and beautiful and all that. You think, well, you made this bed of roses, so there you are. Hope you enjoy the next, how many centuries? I forget. Can't count that high. This is the one I love. Hear my people. Yeah, it's the Hall of Shame. Yeah, Simoniacs. Yeah. And you say, can you give me a job in the church? Yeah, because we've got some cold cash for you. The section of Simoniacs is very clear, and he dares even use the name of Boniface because, you see, allegorically they're turned upside down, because in life they turned upside down that which was of the church for their own profit or their own financial gain. And now, so they pull them in. So then when the new Simoniac is coming in, you know, like pledge. Yeah, and so, yeah, it's like before initiation. Don't worry, once you're in for good. And we do mean good, as in permanent. But he does call out to one, Boniface, you weren't supposed to be here yet. Have you already gotten here? Because they have a vague sense of time left. So the time, of course, is supposed to be 1300. Recall that Dante was born in 1265. See? 65 plus 35, isn't that wild? But it was actually written later. But the idea is that Boniface was not due yet. He was going to be a big star in damn popedom, but not yet. It would be premature. And these other fellows say, when you go down, I'm demonstrating, that you can keep them coming down. See, you have to push down to make room for the next one. Yeah, because they're coming. I mean, you know, they come and they go. Well, they don't go. They come, and then they get to go their special home. Interesting for these Simoniacs. Oh, there's Satan. Ooh. And of course, because he betrayed God, he is in ice cold water, damn him. And he can't move. He can just sit there and be frustrated because he is a fallen angel. And, oh, there, you see Dante and Virgil up on, they probably don't want to get burr. Yeah, I bet you know. And he flaps his wings because he's very frustrated. Because you can't do anything with the wings because he's in the ice. So, I mean, that's the way you end up as king of hell. I mean, it can be very sad. Now, when he leaves hell, he will then have the opportunity to make other visits. And unfortunately, often in literature courses, we never get past hell. It's like, you know, students tell me, not like you, but I mean, regular people will say to me things like, I never got past World War II, and that's so depressing. You know, I mean, World War II is wonderful, Frank. I'm not criticizing. It's, I love World War II, don't get me wrong. It's just that I think they ought to know about post-World War II. Just a little pedagogical point I thought I'd make. And, okay, and it's the same thing that I feel about doing the Divine Comedy. I want them to get past hell and make sure they understand that there are a lot of folks that get saved, but that doesn't mean they are necessarily the best folks. If they were the best folks, they wouldn't be in purgatory, because purgatory means you need to be cleansed. Purgation, okay, purged. And let me note that there are all kinds. People who didn't repent until the last minute. People who were excommunicated and didn't get it straightened out. Procrastinators, people of that sort. Oh, indolent. You don't want to be indolent. Because indolent people sitting around in a lazy boy watching ESPN all day or something and saying, I should be at Mass, I should be performing acts of mercy. Maybe tomorrow. Yeah. See, but they'll be saved, but they're not ready. Boy, they have got some. The anti-purgatory, that will be time. You're waiting there. Have you ever been? I'm sure you have. We all have. And waiting for our appointment to a doctor or a dentist. And moments, nay, much moment passes by. That's the anti-purgatory. You're waiting for your punishment. But it's good punishment, because out of the punishment, you're going to heaven. Okay, so no damnation for you. But it's going to hurt. But you're not ready yet, because you're in reception. You're in the anti-purgatory. So they've already cleared your mind. And you say, gee, I'm ready. I'll look at this old issue of Vogue, and then maybe I'll get called for my appointment. But it takes time to get there to start your real workout. And with that, we'll have our 4-minute break. We are talking about purgatory, which I think is so fascinating, because when you have time perhaps to study it on your own, you'll be aware of the fact that many of the people who are here, like lust, gluttony, avarice, and so forth and so on, they're all in hell too. The difference is all these people are on their way to being saved. So it's not the sin, it's what is accompanying that. In the case of those in purgatory, whether or not it was late or early, there is always the element of remorse. And in every case, in purgatory as in hell, there will be individuals who were either well known in Florence, contemporaries, or roughly so, like Francesca. Francesca was an aunt of one of Dante's friends. You remember the woman who was damned for lust, which I think is rather interesting. And the people in purgatory are also either well-known contemporaries, or they are famous in the history, the recent or remote past, as we will see. The multitude of the slothful, you can call them indolent, slothful, but they're all hurtful words for people who refuse to study, who put off their responsibilities and say, yeah, I'll do it the night before. I'm coasting, man. I'm already kind of making an A. You can tell that I've dealt with these wretched people. Yes, often. I hope you never get near people like that. But these are people who are last minute and hope to succeed in the circles of the blessed. But they got a long way to go. And these long walks, and they are covered, and you have the idea that it is punishment and sometimes quite unpleasant. But they're always happy about it. because it has a purpose. See, if you're being punished in hell, you're just a loser. I mean, you're there. Nobody says, oh, look how nicely they fly around forevermore with their ex-boyfriend. That isn't going to help you. You're damned. Okay? So you're not going to get better accommodations in hell. No. You're staying. But these people are going through stages. And so that is the way it is. You go through each period. You don't know what's ahead when you're anti-purgatory, you know, when you're reading those old magazines. You don't know what's coming. But in fact, this is all based on stages for those who are repentant and who will be taken into heaven. So that is the idea there. Again, look at the people with the, you see the rocks on their heads because they think they're so smart. See, somebody say, oh, I know all about the 14th century. I'm so brilliant. I've studied my charts. And those of us, those of us with great knowledge, we too must be humble, despite our vast treasure house that we call our minds. But those are the prideful, and you see what gets, but they're going to come out okay, so we're happy about that. But carrying those rocks around isn't fun. But again, these are individuals that he would have known about, or they might even be historical figures. And I think he is very sympathetic because I think he gets right and judgmental and kind of ugly in hell. But in purgatory, he tends to be, yeah, you're nice. Yeah, you're a good kid. So it's like attitudes change. Now you say, well, how's Virgil doing? I think Virgil's beginning to get a little uncomfortable. You know why? Because he's a nice Roman. He really is, but he didn't go to church. And so, I mean, he's out of his, you know, he's out of his territory. He just doesn't feel right about being here. Because, you know, he sort of wants to be back in limbo and see Plato and Aristotle and kind of get together with all the guys. Hey, Homer, how's it going? You know, that kind of thing. So, look who's here. Beatrice. She's been watching all of this. She knows. Up from heaven, she knows that it's time to say goodbye to Virgil. Gosh, we're going to miss you. We loved our philosophy. We loved Rome. But we know that that would take us only part of the way. We have to have the faith. So, keep it going, Virgil. It's been real. But he leaves, see, because he's no longer qualified. So, it's a real sad thing. I remember that day in class. It was real sad for me when we had to say goodbye to Virgil, because as we all, you know, we all love the Aeneid, and so it's sort of it's a bittersweet moment, let's just say that, when we reach that particular level of the Divine Comedy, and then upward he goes. Now this, of course, will definitely be upward, and think of all the ways that you can study this. You can study it, in fact, with the old geocentric theory of the world, because in many ways you see the various areas, the planets, and you would say, well, you sort of have the Earth, the geocentric, you know, in the middle, and then you have these areas in perfect circles floating around. It seems he took that idea, and you say, no Copernicus working there. No. We're not ready for any of that. That would have been that heresy. But all of these are areas, and you see God's way up there. So if you are like in that first level, the moon, breaker of vows. And you say, well, I don't know about vow breakers. No, they've made it. So let it go, okay? Because you're in. Yeah, you're in. You made boo-boos, but that's over, and nobody is condemning you. See, I think all of these areas, lovers of glory, well, that's not theologians. Ooh, yeah. I mean, yeah. So, I mean, all of righteous rulers, yes. I mean, so all of these are various areas, and the organization, which is described in detail, let me assure you, as you get to the Paradiso, you can look forward to that, about all of these areas. And what is important about each of them to me will be, of course, that everyone is contented and happy. So you can't imagine someone saying, man, this is not the deal I was really counting on. This is a whole bummer. I'm really disappointed with heaven. No, I mean, it doesn't work that way, okay? It's just like everybody's there. You are where you belong. And believe me, there is seating. You're where you belong, so don't ask them. There's no appeals. There's no like, I don't like this section. I want to sit somewhere else. No. One of the most interesting people for me is named Constance. She was the wife of the Emperor Henry V, or Henry VI, actually. And what she did was, in essence, leave her monastic vows to marry Henry. Now you say, gosh, that was a bad thing. I don't really think she had a choice. I believe the truth of the matter is her brothers came and demanded. She married him late, and you remember she would produce the Emperor Frederick II. And you say, oh, Frederick II Hohenstaufen, yes. Well, he's in hell. You say, well, his mama must be upset. You don't know about all this stuff. See, if you're in heaven, everything is great. So you don't have to think, gosh, I've got a damn kid. Lucky for you, all of that is out of your head. You are just happy as can be. Now, she's in the lowest level of heaven. So you see there, Dante and Beatrice. And so he will ask these women, he says, aren't you kind of bummed out that you're in the lowest level of heaven? And of course, you see the answer. In his will is our peace. In other words, there is no question. We are where we are, and that's fine. So you get that straight from the beginning, because when you are at the lowest level, you know how people are. But that's regular folks. Obviously, these people have made the big time. So they are not complaining or saying, you know, ratemyplaceinheaven.com or something like that. It's not going to be like that, I promise. Everybody is where they need to be. And this is just such a scene of, well, overdone, but it is definitely a scene of contentment. The sight of God is, of course, considered, and again, this is all from Dore, those who know about the etchings that he made of the Divine Comedy, Gustave Dore. He is so famous for. This particular one is supposed to show you that the sight of God and God's cohort is a visual splendor that he would not be able to handle if he were not with Beatrice, because of course he is a still living human being full of sin. So he is obviously just passing through. We understand he may get to come back, but we don't know that, okay? No guarantees. You're just getting to see this. You're just getting a special opportunity, and you better take advantage. You better listen up. But that is the idea. And again, is it supposed to be the young woman of Dante's dreams? Probably not, since he barely knew anything about her. I think only that she was to him this sort of imagery of purity and dedication, and not some sort of wild teenager or anything of that sort. So we want to be clear on that point, very clear. The allegory is always of interest to me because I want to make sure that everybody understands that it's not just the story. The story would be good enough to me even if there was no allegory, but he sees himself as every soul, and then every soul, and again, there were threes: sin, punishment, redemption, hell, purgatory, and heaven. Again, you know, you can't be in doubt. Everything is going to come in threes. In fact, damnation as well. But sin, punishment, and redemption, and as human soul experiences those, which of course, by the last canto or two, in the Paradiso, we know, of course, Dante is a very committed Catholic as well as a very committed lover of the classics. I mean, you know, it is that wonderful medieval combination of the two that makes Dante so important. And of course, with Virgil's Rome as a foundation, and that, remember, that's where it started when he woke up in the woods and discovered Virgil there, and Virgil had been his inspiration. And so the idea of Virgil describing the founding of the Roman Empire, because think about it, we go back to Aeneas. For those of you who had the classical history, you remember, of course. And you remember how the Trojan War and all the rest of it. So he takes that literally, and that represents, of course, how we use classical learning. Well, the Beatrice Mary business is very difficult, I think, but I guess he wanted to have a tangible image of innocent female beauty. I guess some people would understand that, understanding there's nothing of the carnal here. It's all ethereal and spiritual. And importantly, in the history of the church, these are important times for Mariology, the development of the role of Mary in the faith, and all the days that celebrate her. And again, I cannot stress too much about the significance of Catholicism to Dante. He may have gotten in some trouble with the church for reasons that are pretty obvious, but that didn't mean he wasn't a believer, because he was. But anyway, idealized love in the Blessed Virgin Mary. So, reason you can get without the church, faith you will obtain, and of course, lots of people will be saved by faith, but thanks to a lack of education, they will not have the reason to support it. But that's okay. Now you say, well, I've got the reason, but I didn't get on the Christian bandwagon. Well, then, you didn't make it, did you? I mean, yeah. I mean, it's just, that's the way it works, though. And again, we understand that high medieval or late medieval Catholicism is not about, well, we've got a broader approach here. Yeah, come on in. No, we got it, and this is the way it is. This is the black and white approach, no question. Now, this part gets even more idealistic. There can be only two authorities on earth, and you say, but I want my kings of England. Where are my kings of France? Then don't say things. That's heresy. We want just two rulers. There are two swords, two rulers. Thank you very much. We have one, Caesar, and the other, the Pope. Because according to church theory, the church had two swords, one it used and one it had used, meaning that it used the sword of church authority, but it told the Caesar, you take my other sword and you go get him, man. In other words, the dual authority. But we know which one was more important. And we are doing official teachings here, right? The duality, of course, of Roman and Christian goes on until you get to the sewer, the lowest and the worst. And we know who that is. Yes. Three culprits who were going to get chomped in three mouths. And Satan has three mouths, and each one tastes good. And each one of these rascals, and again, if you're in for allegories, you'll love it, because now here are threes. In heaven we had Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And in hell we have Brutus, Cassius, and Judas as our three bandits. I mean, it's interesting how he works it out, you can see, because it's very important, I guess, in his theory. The threes, the 33 cantos, on and on, the terza rima. So if you remember anything from this afternoon, you'll remember the theories. And I love this, good eating. And you say, and it's the taste that keeps on giving. Because you think, well, gosh, he's going to eat them up, and then he won't have anything left. Oh, they come back. Because, yeah, chomp, 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 yeah. They're always seconds for you. And that is one particular concept. Gruesome, but of course, it's sort of like the authority of the church and the authority of the empire are both Roman-based, aren't they? But those who try to affect it adversely are then going to get it. And they're going to be eaten over and over again in the three mouths of Satan. So I've always thought this particular imagery was a particular interesting one for the study of Dante. And you know, you might say, if you were Boniface VIII's mother, you might say, oh, doesn't he look good? I'm so proud, you know. Okay, well, that's for Boniface's mother. But for the rest of us, don't you think he's a haughty and arrogant so-and-so? I really, really don't. He was a powerful one. And again, oh, he played family. I know what you're saying. You don't mean, yes, he was a nepotist. Yeah, I know it. Me too. Every time I say the word, it's shocking. I mean, I just moved to Alabama, so I don't know much about this, but I've heard about I've heard about it. I've heard about a little nepotism. Anyway, he'll always emphasize, even though, I hate to use this expression, but I learned it when I was a kid. He hated his guts. Have you ever heard of it? That's really nasty, isn't it? But, yeah, I mean, he really hated his guts. talking about Pope Boniface VIII. But that doesn't mean, he says, well, then I just don't believe in popes. Pope, pope, pope. You know, no. We got to wait for Martin Luther for that, okay? We're not doing that in my period, okay? That's for other people's work. He will always say, this is the Vicar of Christ. This is just a loser Vicar of Christ. And I hate him very much. And he's the Vicar of Christ, but he's going to hell. Damn him. You say, but that seems paradoxical. I don't make the rules, I'm just telling you. He really dislikes him, and yet he never doubts that he is head of the church. Henry VII, now he's not our Henry VII, Carol. This is another Henry VII. This is sort of like Brand X, because this is the Emperor Henry VII, not a great success. But in Dante's writings, he will speak of him as Caesar, who will bring light to Italy, who will free the people from tyranny. Yeah, right. He died young while he was in Italy, I believe, but he was not a success. There are few, if any, emperors of this period that will be successful, as I've pointed out to you. The Holy Roman Empire seemed to be a good idea at the time, but didn't work out so well. And we are in the late medieval period. However, this does not affect Dante. Dante goes on with these ideals of Pope and Emperor. See, and that's why I went into this field. Because I said, boy, what a trooper. I've got the ideal, the whole thing. They're losers, they're flops, one thing and another. But they still believe in them. Pope and Emperor together, having the authority given to them by God. And that's what the Divine Comedy was all about. And that is in part why we turn to it in terms of studying the Middle Ages. And of course, it represents, at least in my opinion, humbly, one of the great works of Western literature. Now, since I've droned on and on about Italy, we will fortunately turn to England next week and talk about how did they have such a string of unfortunate rulers. And you say, you mean before the Tudors? I certainly do. Everybody thinks, oh, Henry VIII, oh, Elizabeth. Yeah, they're kind of big, but we're going to talk about some that were pretty big too, especially if you're a Shakespeare person. So I invite you to come back next week. Thank you. Thank you very much.